Hi guys, bit of a different daily email update. This is a form of a video, and you will also have the insert and the question paper for this examination series. This is a report on the examination. Examiners release these every exam series for both papers, and obviously I use them to influence my teaching. I absolutely do, because the examiners pick out what students are doing well and what's still tripping students up. However, I thought, given the amount of time we've got left, I will just go through this one with you. So, moving on, question 1. So, question 1 is fairly straightforward. Most people get a decent amount of marks for this, but where people trip up are as follows. So, basically, either they put too many. So, they might jot down 5 or 6 statements, which of course removes marks from you. Another way people make mistakes is they don't realise you do actually have to do a bit of inference here. Not all of these statements are going to be blindingly obvious. And another thing to remember is they will be chronological. So you'll be able to answer these as you go through the text, as you read through the text. Something else to bear in mind is do pay attention to this. So what you do is, if you think this answer is correct, you shade in a little circle in the middle of the box. If later you go back and think that's wrong, you put a cross through it. And if later still you go back, change your mind and think it's right, you put a circle around it. Okay? Dead simple. Well, not really. Actually, it's quite complicated, but do pay attention to that bit. So, moving through to question 2. Now, remember this. Question 2 is dealing with the what. So, in this case, the boats, whereas question 4 is dealing with the how. Both these questions ask you to compare. Question 2 is based on some sort of abstract or concrete thing within the text. So, for instance, in this case, it's the boats, which is pretty concrete, you know. So what we're doing here is we are sort of comparing how these, details about these boats across both texts. And again, do remember, this is why you use your time at the start to read carefully and highlight. You are allowed highlighters, bring them and use them. So in this case, for instance, we're looking at boats, and the examiners are saying here that at lower levels, basically learners are able to identify maybe 1 or 2 differences, and that's absolutely fine. You can get a really high grade just identifying 1 or 2 differences. But at lower levels, there's no real link. So the example they've given here is the lower level student might comment on the fact that one boat is bigger than the other. And they might then talk about how one boat is safer than the other. However, unless you're making that clear link, unless you're saying, well, the larger boat seems to weather the storm better, so it's safer, the examiner doesn't know you're making that link. You're making that inference. So you do need to make that clear, you know. That's why the entire mention one thing from document 1, compare to something in document 2, makes so much sense, okay? Because it's a great way of showing clearly that you're comparing these 2 things. And then you put your inference based on those 2 things. Okay? Right. Another thing to sort of bear in mind here, really, and this is something I've been talking to you guys about pretty much all the time, really, is that less is often more. Okay? So a detailed explanation of a small number of differences and inferences on them is much better. So maybe pick 2, maybe 3. Is much better than going off and putting down 8 or 9 that you never do anything with, that's all over the place, you know. Less is more sometimes. Now, question 3, remember, this is basically question 2 on paper 1 with the training wheels taken off. Okay, the only difference is they don't give you those bullet points and they don't print that text out there for you. You get 12 marks for it though, so you get more marks. It's a great question. It is a really good one. Okay? They will always stick in a wealth of stuff to draw from, and we're drawing from the same stuff we did when we analysed fiction. We are still talking about metaphors, similes, onomatopoeia, alliteration, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, that sort of thing. And again, what we are doing is we are identifying something, we are quoting it, and then we're explaining the effect on the reader. And again, it's that effect on the reader that is super important here. Really important. And again, less is more. The examiner is going to be much happier with, say, 3 things that you've gone into a lot of detail with than, say, 10 or 12 that you've just jotted down. Okay, so bear in mind as well here that being fairly clear is important. Okay, so there should be a link, you know. You should not list a bunch of things that you've identified and then spend the next paragraph talking about the interpretations of them. Put one thing down, then explain it. Put the second thing down, then explain it. Okay? So, and again, it's that link that's important. So, for instance, if someone's putting vast down to show the power of the sea without making it clear that it's the size of the enormous wave, that's not going to get them any marks, really, or not many. However, if the student says, well, the author uses the verb vast here, sorry, the adjective vast here to describe the size of the wave, and that gives us the idea of how powerful the sea is, that's going to get good marks. Generalized and generic effects aren't great either. So this metaphor here, the example they've given, sucks into the belly of the wave. If you put down, it makes the reader feel scared, that's too generic. You're not going to get great marks. Tell you what, pause the video now and have a bit of a think to yourself about how you could improve that. Okay, so how could you talk about the effects on the reader of that metaphor there sucks into the belly of the wave? Okay, the way I'd improve it is I'd talk about sucked into the belly of the wave, almost putting across the sea as some sort of giant monster out to get them and eat them. Now that's much more specific to the context of what's going on than making them feel scared. You know? I mean, lots of things make the reader feel scared. I mean, someone might be scared of spiders, that might make them feel scared. Be a bit more specific. Right. So, basically, again, bigger text ideas are important here as well. So again, less is more. So do more with fewer quotes and also explore those big ideas. You absolutely shouldn't be quoting anything from outside that bit of text you get. However, you should be engaging with it. If there's this central big idea or theme running through it, which you should have identified when you're doing your note taking at the start, then talk about that. Talk about what you've identified in relation to that. That's absolutely fine. Now, question 4. Question 4 is our comparison question. So with question 4, obviously what we're doing is we're looking at the how. Okay? So we want to be comparing ideas and opinions or perspectives, in this case the author's feelings and perspectives about their adventures at sea, and we want to be talking about how they get those across, how they convey those, so the methods they use. Don't forget, again, method can be anything here. And we want to be talking about how that gets across what they're feeling. So 2 things to bear in mind here, okay? Compare like with like, okay? So what you want to be doing, okay, is, if we have a look at this example they've given, it wouldn't be enough to say that Fogel in the first extract is scared about his boat capsizing, whereas Hudson is uncertain about the safety of the ship. You need to do a bit more of that, more than that, because the fear of the ocean, as they've said, and concern about safety are 2 different things. So you want to be comparing about how they potentially responded with terror, or how they both reviewed the relative safety of their boat. So one might be happy with the safety of their boat, the other might not be, you know. That would be a better comparison. You're comparing something with something else that's pretty similar. And remember, or either pretty similar, pretty different, or on the same topic. Right, so another thing to remember here is that you do also want to be engaging with those methods, and don't forget that a method here is more or less anything. It could be the tone they use, it could be structurally how they structure the text, it could also be things like language features they've used or word choice. Okay, so we've got a little bit of time left on this video, so I'm just going to go through another couple of quick things with you. And the first one really is the importance of highlighting and making notes. So you know, for instance, right from the start, from reading those questions, that you need to be looking for different types of boat, so details on different types of boat, and you also know that you need to be looking at different perspectives and feelings about their experiences at sea, right? So we're going to be looking for methods there and different perspectives and feelings. That should influence how you highlight. That should influence what you're highlighting and how. You should be making notes in the margin. Okay, so boat was brand spanking new, right? Okay. Instantly, that's something I want to note down. Just put a note in the margin to highlight. Okay, and again, if we're looking for perspectives as well, Okay, we're going to be doing similar, and you're probably going to want to do it in a different colour maybe. So I might, for instance, so I might, for instance, decide to highlight in a different colour. Well, how about this bit here? Come on, son, I thought, within the data break. Something wasn't right. Well, that's a different perspective. That's, you know, it's starting to feel anxiety. Okay, so that's what we do. And it also might be an idea as well to think about overall themes and ideas here as well. You know, I mean, the way this is structured, right, it's very much your sort of standard going into something structure, really, isn't it? You've got your sort of, it's almost like a story, you know, you've got your sort of exposition there where you're talking about them travelling on, and then that moves on to the main action.